Yeah, today I'm going to focus more on how social media can make a brand. I think Michael explained very well how it can break the brand. Before I get started though, Michael said he was quite impressed with the crowd and the level of understanding about China. I am too. I think there's been 7 sessions already, including the intro. China's biggest social media platform, Weibo, was mentioned in every single one, and it was not pronounced wrong once. It's Weibo, it's not Weibo. So top marks for that. How social media can make or break your brand in China. I thought it's late in the day, and I thought for a late presentation I'll do my best to design it in a lively way. Rather than going through a sort of bullet point list of what can make your brand in China on social, I thought I'd introduce the China social media dream team. I'll introduce several characters as a way to sort of describe the essential elements of a good social media strategy in China. So who would be on your China social media dream team? And here they are. 4 characters. And I'll go through the presentation one by one, and we'll meet them. I would say though, I'm not saying you need to hire 4 people. This is more an analogy really, more a memorable way of sort of describing essential elements of strategy. Anyway, so number 1, let me introduce you to the analyst. On social media in China and anywhere in the world, we have an unprecedented opportunity to understand our consumer. We can eavesdrop into the thousands, the millions of conversations happening every day to really derive some incredible insight. That's no different in China. It's very open and we can really find out a lot. So it's the analyst's job to look at these millions of conversations, to gain insight from data, from trends, to find out what our target is talking about and exactly where they're talking. And I'll take you through what she would tell us if she were here today. The first thing I'd say is that this analyst has plenty to analyze in China. Social media, the internet is huge. 564 million internet users in China, which is bigger than the population of most countries, and it's bigger than the combined internet populations of all these countries here. So she has plenty to analyze, it's huge. The penetration of social media is quite incredible as well in China. 95% of people in big cities are registered on a social media site. Also, 50% of internet users are registered on at least 2 platforms. I'll quickly talk about the sort of 2 platforms they're most likely to be registered on. The biggest platforms now are here, the logos on the right-hand side. The first one is Sina Weibo. Everybody's mentioned that today. Without a doubt, it's the sort of biggest story in social media and indeed communications in China in the past 3 years. Functionally, originally quite similar to Twitter. You post 140 characters, share it with your group of friends. Perhaps more multimedia than Twitter was. Probably occupies a more important place than Twitter ever did, culturally and societally. That's Sina Weibo. The one on the right is WeChat. This is the story of the year, or the end of last year. This platform is more, at its core, is about one-on-one communications. It's about mobile one-on-one communications, similar to WeChat. But in addition to this, it has a lot of social media functionality that you'd see on Weibo, etc. You can share with a bunch of friends at the same time. You can look through your feed, all the other things people are sharing. These are the 2 big platforms that you really need to know about now, Weibo and WeChat. I like to summarize the difference of them using the word social media. Sort of Weibo is about the media in social media. It's where sort of influencers are sharing with thousands of people at one time. WeChat's more about the social of social media. It's more about people sharing with their sort of small groups of friends in a sort of more closed, private way, closer interactions. Another slide is on these 2 ways, the Weibo and the WeChat. And I asked sort of what's the best way. I'm going to show you 2 drawings. These are drawings that I did myself, so they're crap. The first one here is I put it on my Weibo 2 or 3 years ago to sort of, and you can see that's me trying to work, and that's Weibo distracting me. And this was the sort of feeling that sort of resonated with a lot of people. It was really that important in our day-to-day lives. It was that distracting to us. That was 2 years or so ago. This couple of weeks ago, I posted this. This is me in bed with WeChat, while Weibo is looking on jealously. There's statistics to explain this, but I think this is a much better way to do so. The relative importance of WeChat is really something we can't ignore. I don't think Weibo will die anytime soon. They will probably exist differentiated in a way that I just described. Weibo being more of the media, WeChat being more a way people connect on a more personal level. So what's the best way? Back to the analyst, thinking about the analyst and her job. She's got a lot to analyse in China, for sure, but she's got a couple of big challenges. The first one I like to summarise as funny money. In China, in communications, traditionally there is an expectation that people that cover your stories, receive money for that payment in the traditional media. That's something that's carried over into social media in a big way. You can rarely get an influencer to cover your story without paying him. That leads to a lot of interesting dynamics within social media. Because of this sort of habit, it means there's an incentive to make your content look more popular than it really is. That means there's all these business models that have arisen, sort of people paying for positive commentary, people paying for fans, fake fans, etc., etc. So because of this, the way money changes hands within social media communications, you get all these crazy dynamics. So one thing being you pay for influencer commentary, another one you pay for followings. You pay to make yourself look more popular. Which leads to this situation. This is a graphic, another sort of dodgy one that I put together. Plants vs. Zombies, a popular iPhone game. This is Ogilvy versus Zombies. Zombie here refers to an account that has been set up by somebody that usually manages thousands and thousands of these accounts. It doesn't represent a real person, it's a fake account. And that account will be put to work to make something look more popular than it is, either by following it or by commenting positively on it. And this is done by brands themselves, it's done by the agencies of brands, it's done by influencers. And I couldn't understate this point anymore. This is what makes the analyst's job really, really hard. It's very, very difficult to really see where the influence is, to see what the value is. As an agency, my clients are complaining why their competitor has twice as many fans as them. Well, it's because they're fucking buying them. This is a really big deal in China. It's my biggest headache, and it makes the job of analysis very difficult. Bit more on the analyst. If our analyst was to have a look at New Zealand, the conversation that's happening about New Zealand, what would she see? Well, there's about 100 mentions of New Zealand, 100 conversations about New Zealand every minute on Chinese social media. That's about 3,000 during the course of my presentation today, which is quite high. How high relative to other countries? The next slide does a terrible job of that because, the size has been distorted. The large piece you've got here is the USA. This is a proportion of the conversation around the countries happening on social media. The large one is the USA. Going clockwise, the smaller one is New Zealand at 7% of conversation. The UK has 23% of conversation, and the other one is Australia with about 8% of the conversation. Which is, I think, quite a big amount for New Zealand. I will mention this is in the past 3 months, so there's been a big story which has affected it. We'll look at that in a sec. Before I move on, so this is the same data. Looking at the relative share of voice on social media, you've got the USA biggest. I thought about it. I thought about the size of New Zealand's economy, its population, and I sort of compared it to that and used this data as a proportion of population, etc. So the next one is share of voice as a proportion of GDP. The chart's not displaying right, but the big section of the pie is New Zealand there. So, and you get a similar thing when you compare it against population. Again, New Zealand's the big one there. So New Zealand on social media in China is really sort of punching above its weight. It's doing a great job, and that's indeed testament to the work that's being done. So, what are people talking about? This is a very quick breakdown of that. So Fonterra is a third of that conversation over the past 3 months. Travel being a big one. You get sort of one-off stories that create a lot of buzz, like the working holiday visa issue. So it's a very quick look at what people are talking about. The analyst should go a lot further. If we're talking about insight, they really need to dig into this. They need to really find out, if we're in the travel sector, what is appealing to people and how can we better do that. This isn't an insight as such yet. She'd have to dig a lot further into this. That's her job when it comes to delivering insight. I'll say one thing quickly. As well as delivering insight, the analyst also, the listening work that she does is also about crisis prevention. Fran mentioned my big Switzerland-based client. We help them set up their sort of listening mechanism. They represent the sort of biggest infant formula brands in China. We listen to we have a team reading every single post on Chinese social media every day for every one of their products, every one of their brand mentions, every one of their joint ventures, every one of their joint ventures products, which is thousands and thousands of posts every day. And we have a very sort of robust mechanism for sort of escalating that and assessing the risk. So they are really taking this seriously in this listening, very seriously. So that was the analyst. Next character I'm going to introduce you to is the planner. It's this guy's job to look at the data, look at the trends, and look at the insight and match it with what the brand can say. On social media, the sort of least he can do is select the content that you're going to post. If he's doing a very good job, he'll come up with what I call a social purpose. On social media in China, you'll do a lot better if you have a strong point of view, if you're sort of slightly controversial, if you really have a value you stand for. And this is what the planner's job is to figure out. Here's an example of what I call a content mix. So British Airways is obviously a company very associated with its country of origin. If they were to look at a conversation around the UK, they would find a lot about travel, about history, heritage, etc. So based on that insight, they've selected their content mix. You've got, and they've split it into 3 things: British style and culture, flying know-how, and UK expertise. This is pretty basic stuff. This is just responding to what people are interested in generally. I think when brands do a great job in China, as I said, they select this social purpose. Crayola is an example of a brand doing that very well, I think. Their content mix, their sort of basic everyday content, is on childhood creativity and the artwork of its followers. More importantly, it has a social purpose. So when the brand did its social listening, it discovered that mums, when they talk about creativity, often refer to limits. The education system is limiting my child's creativity. It's very rote-focused, rote-based learning. I'm very limited in terms of the products I can buy. So this idea of limits came up again and again in our social listening. So we came up with this brand idea of Colour Unlimited, and that's the sort of logo here. But the social purpose we defined as this. Crayola believes that China would be a better place if fewer limits were placed on the colourful creativity of every child in China. Now, having this behind everything you say and designing your sort of campaigns around this is really powerful, and we've done a really great job doing this in China, in my opinion, with Crayola. So we do these wider stories, I call them. So rather than just smatterings of content, we sort of tell these wider stories on social media. For example, we did a piece of research with some of China's leading child development experts to sort of give some substance to what we were saying. That's a sort of first stage. A second stage, or a sort of concluding stage, was this video, which we actually took the idea of a limitless environment to its extreme, allowed kids to actually express themselves in a world with no limits. And the video, can we put the video on? Actually had this is back to front, this is filmed back to front. It's an offline event we did. Sure if you could read that. It ended with creativity, give it a little more space. So my point here is just really, rather than smatterings of content over social, we sort of told bigger stories with what I call a social purpose, so a bit more of a point of view, pushing the boundaries really, and we're really succeeding with that. So yeah, that was the planner, and his advice is to look for a social purpose based on the insight. Next, I'm going to introduce you to the social creative. She's got two things to say, actually. The first one is that in China, we're seeing a move towards what we call adaptive content. It's not just posting stuff online that you wrote 2 weeks ago, according to a calendar. You're actually paying attention to what's going on in the outside world, creating content very quickly based on that. And I'll give an example in a sec. The other one is ideas on any channel that get people sharing. Ideas that are social by design, another concept. I'll go into more detail with examples in a sec. So two things she has to say. So the first one is about this idea of adaptive content, the ability to adapt very fast to what's going on. Similar thing, Oreo with the Dunk in the Dark campaign. It wasn't a campaign, it was a tweet in the West around the Super Bowl. When the lights went out at the Super Bowl, Oreo reacted within a few minutes by posting something saying you can still dunk in the dark. And now a lot of people talked about this, and they sort of heralded this new age of social media, the idea of adaptive content, real-time marketing. My reaction to it was that we've been doing this in China for a long time. And the masters of it in China are Durex, the condom brand. So in 2011, this is a year before that Super Bowl Oreo thing, in Beijing we had some terrible rain. The sewage system was crap, so the rain stayed on the ground, and it was a pretty miserable time. Very quickly, Durex responded with this piece of content, which translated you could understand as never be worried in rainy days if you have Durex. Why? Because you can use the condoms to cover your shoes and walk in the rain. So this is a brilliant piece of adaptive content. The masters of this, as I said, are Durex, another one from them. So during the election campaign, after President Obama was re-elected, they came up with this one. These are the wives of the president and his competitor, showing the difference between Obama and Romney. Anyway, so there you go. Adaptive content, reacting very quickly to what's happening. Another example is one where I can show some results as well. This is British Airways. They didn't just react with, this was about the royal baby. When the royal baby was born, they reacted pretty fast as well. Not just with content, they actually reacted with a tactical fare, offering free travel for those under 2. It was a silly thing. I doubt they had that many takers of it, but still, like, it created a huge amount of buzz online. It was just a tweet, it was just a single thing. The graph on the right shows mentions of British Airways over a couple of months. The peak was that single tweet. So this adaptive content is really a trend in China. You've got to set up your team to be able to react that fast. You've got to have creatives within easy access that can create visual content. Really is not acceptable anymore to just post what's been written 3 weeks ago. A lot of brands are still doing that. The other concept I mentioned, or the other concept that the social creative is introducing is social by design. Social media is very powerful, I believe that. Couldn't be more powerful. That doesn't necessarily mean investment in what's called social media unlocks that. This is what I call the social media misunderstanding, which is that to unlock the social media benefit, you have to invest in something called social media. I think that's a huge misconception. What you should be doing is designing your communications and designing your business thinking about the power of social media. And so you're designing your communications around social media, social by design. So these are events. They can be out-of-home adverts. They can be PR events. They can be anything. You're just thinking about if people are going to share that on social media or not. And you don't get past the design stage unless it has that in it. This is a video of a recent case. It's British Airways as well. They were launching a flight between Chengdu direct to London. The traditional thing is to have a PR press conference. We didn't just do that. We sort of pictured told a much wider story. We did something that I think is social by design. We thought about what would happen if Chengdu's pandas could travel direct to London. And we held a flash mob around this. So the video shows it quite well.
女士们、先生们，下午好！伦敦首航出发 BA89航班已抵达熊猫故乡成都，谢谢您搭乘英航。
So it wasn't just plain pandas, which you're about to see. They played on a few cultural icons. Designing this event, we just thought of every possible thing we could do to get people talking. Sort of visuals that would get people sharing. One was the fact we found a pilot that could speak Chinese.
赶快加入我们！ 马上搭乘银行直飞伦敦有微博。
So social by design, very important. Social media. To elaborate on this a little bit further, a couple of other great ideas of examples of social by design. I can't go into too much detail because of time. The top left-hand one is a clothing brand called Vankel. This campaign, in my opinion, is the best social media campaign of last year, but it wasn't a social media campaign. It was an out-of-home advert that had social media talking points built into it, which made people share, which got people talking about it. Basically, it was a very, very famous blogger who was embroiled in a scandal. He went quiet for a while and suddenly came back as the spokesperson for this ad. Some very clever copy saying, sort of, nothing to fear, I'm out here. My point is that it wasn't a social media campaign, but it was delivered incredible social media results. Below is British Airways. They actually put a panda as the nose cone on that first flight. That wasn't a social media campaign, but delivered incredible social media value. New Zealand, Air New Zealand, brilliant. Like, I was so impressed when I flew over here, looking at the Bear Grylls safety video, and I looked onto social media and saw Chinese people talking about that like crazy. Like, that wasn't a social media campaign, but delivered incredible social media value. So what I'm saying is just bear that in mind when designing anything. One person to go, the relationship gal. She is there to get the right third parties involved, the right media, the right influencers involved in your campaign. All too often, foreign brands think they set up a Weibo, they set up a WeChat, and that's it. It's all about your own platform. We've just got to do everything we can to build the fans, etc. I think this is a problem with many brands in China. To sort of illustrate that point, I've got this graph. Michael touched on it earlier, actually. This is Coca-Cola, and this is their social media presences a couple of months ago. On Facebook, they've got 50 million fans. On Sina Weibo, they had more like 50,000. I think their content's good. I just think, despite what some of the statistics, despite what some of the brands are showing you in terms of their numbers of owned community, I think Chinese people are not that up for following brands on social media. I don't think community management is the way to go. It's an important part of it, but I think third parties are. So, but people are listening to what people are saying online. They're listening to influencers, and the bottom part of this explains that. So 50 million followers on Facebook has Coca-Cola, the most followed. Down here you've got the most followed, or now the second most followed influencer. That's Yao Chen, who New Zealand has been working with. Media as well. Some of the big media on social media have bigger accounts than any brands have succeeded in developing. So you've got to work with the third parties, and this has to be a big part of your social media campaign. I'll show this very quickly, it's 40 seconds. This is, I'm sure you've seen it, this is a summary of Yao Chen's trip to New Zealand with the big campaign. It's there for 100 hours, split the trip into 5 different sections. And then this relationship led up to Yao Chen getting married in New Zealand. Again, a huge talking point on China's social media and delivering huge value for the New Zealand brand. And New Zealand are doing a good job as well, I think, with some of their relationships. So yeah, that's it. That's the team. I'll do a very quick summary. How would the dream team summarize my presentation? The analyst would tell us, use social data to find out what your target talking about and where they're talking about it. She'd also say, beware of zombies. She'd say, don't take numbers at face value in China, dig a bit deeper. The The planner would tell you to find a social purpose, something a bit higher than just smatterings of content. The creative would tell you two things. She'd tell you to respond to news with adaptive content and set up your team to be able to do that. She'd also tell you to ensure all your communications and even aspects of your business are social by design. They encourage sharing. And finally, the relationship girl would tell you to get the right third parties on board. Don't just rely on posting content on your own channel. Thank you. We've been the dream team.
Thank you.